Here's something that most people get completely backwards on Roth conversions. Everyone obsesses over whether to convert or not to convert, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to pay the taxes up front or wait till later and defer. But almost nobody stops to think about how they're paying that tax bill. And as it turns out, that one overlooked decision could be worth $50,000 to $100,000 over the course of your retirement. So today we're going to break down exactly why. We're going to do the math, and we're going to find the break-even point, and we're going to show you exactly when paying taxes from outside the IRA wins and when it doesn't. But first, I want to go ahead and completely change the way you think about Roth accounts, because I can almost promise you that most people have this completely wrong. Here's the phrase you've heard 1,000 times. Roth accounts are tax-free. That's not quite accurate, but it's also not wrong. It's just incomplete. The incomplete version is unfortunately costing people very real money. So here's how I want you to think about this instead. Roth accounts aren't tax-free. They're tax prepaid. So let me say that again. Roth accounts aren't tax-free. They're tax prepaid. You pay the IRS once, up front, right? So that they never participate in that growth again. So think about what that means. Every single dollar of gain, every dividend, every year of compounding inside that Roth is now no longer shared with the government. You paid your tab at the door. The IRS doesn't get a seat at the table for the rest of that meal. Now here's where it gets interesting, because when you understand Roth as tax prepaid rather than tax-free, a question immediately emerges. Where does that prepayment come from? And the answer to that question is worth a lot more than most people realize. So if you want to find out more, stick with me as I welcome you to this latest edition of the Financial Prop Series. Alright, so let's set up the comparison. Side by side, nice and clean. You decide to do a $100,000 Roth conversion and your marginal tax rate is 22%. So the tax bill is $22,000. You have two choices for how to pay that bill. Option A, you let the IRS withhold it directly from the IRA. Easy, automatic, what most people do. You end up with $78,000 in your Roth. Or option B, you write a check from your taxable brokerage account of savings. More effort, and it does require liquid cash, but the full $100,000 now lands in the Roth. Same conversion, same tax rate, same year. So why does it matter? Because $78,000 compounding tax-free for 20 years and $100,000 compounding tax-free for 20 years are not the same number, not even close. And one thing that you really want to understand, this is critical, option B also isn't free. You spent $22,000 of outside money. That money also has an opportunity cost. It could have been invested as well. So the real question is, does the larger Roth balance outrun that opportunity cost? And if so, when? Well, let's take a look and actually see what these numbers look like when we put them side by side, so that if you're considering a Roth conversion, hopefully this will help you decide if, when, and how much, but most importantly, how to pay those taxes. All right, let's run option A first. Let's say you pay the taxes from inside the IRA. $78,000 in that case goes into the Roth. It compounds at, we'll say, 7% annually over 20 years, growing to approximately $301,600. That's a great outcome. Tax-free, you now have a $301,600 balance. But notice something. You converted $100,000, but only $78,000 made it into the tax-free bucket. That $22,000 that was withheld, it never got the Roth treatment. It went straight to the IRS and never compounded anywhere. Now, there's also a technical landmine worth flagging here. If you're under age 59 and a half and you withhold from the IRA to pay taxes, that withheld amount can be treated as an early distribution, triggering a 10% penalty on top of the tax. So if you're thinking of retiring early and you're planning on doing Roth conversions before retirement, paying from inside the IRA doesn't just cost you compounding, it could cost you an additional tax penalty. So file that away, we're going to come back to it. But first, let's take a closer look at what option B looks like. All right, so option B, you pay the $22,000 tax from outside money. Now, the full $100,000 lands inside your Roth IRA with that conversion. At a 7% assumed rate of growth over the course of 20 years, that will now grow to approximately $386,900. But we do have to be honest about this opportunity cost. That $22,000 you used to pay the tax bill, if it had stayed invested at 7% for 20 years, would have grown to about $85,100. So the true net outcome of option B is 386.9K minus 85.1K, which is approximately $301,800. So let's look at those two numbers. Option A, $301,600, and option B, $301,800. At 20 years, they're essentially identical, right? So if you're watching this and thinking, okay, outside money always wins, it's actually more nuanced than that. And that nuance is exactly what makes this very much worth understanding, because the break-even point shifts dramatically based on a few key variables. And knowing what those variables are tells you which option is right for your situation. But before we get into the break-even analysis, I want to show you something that most people completely miss, because there's a version of this story where outside money isn't just equivalent to inside money, it's actually better, if you will, than tax-free, right? So here's the insight that I think changes how most people see this entire strategy of where to pay taxes from. We said that Roth is tax prepaid, right? You move the money in, you pay the tax up front, and the IRS never gets to touch that growth again. But when you pay the taxes from outside money, here's something remarkable that happens. Let's use our previous example of $100,000, but now we're going to change the tax rate and boost it up to 37%. So in this case, you paid $37,000, and let's say you paid it from your outside taxable brokerage account. So again, 100K conversion, 37K tax, paid from outside money. Now 100K is inside your Roth, growing tax-free. But think about the total capital involved, and this is key. $100,000 from the IRA plus $37,000 from your own outside money that you use to prepay the tax, that's $137,000 of total capital, and all of it is now effectively sheltered inside a tax-free structure. You can't write a $37,000 check directly into a Roth IRA. Contribution limits, income limits may block you entirely. But a Roth conversion does allow you to do exactly that. Move the outside taxable assets into the Roth ecosystem by using them to foot the tax bill. So at high enough tax rates, outside money doesn't just match inside money, it makes Roth better, effectively, than tax-free. You're sheltering more capital than you could ever get in through the front door. And here's the kicker. The higher your tax rate, the better this is. At 37%, you shelter $37 for each $100 you convert. At 22%, obviously you shelter $22 per 100. The math actually favors higher earners doing this, which is the opposite of what most people assume. A lot of higher earners, high net worth people getting ready to retire are told, yeah, this is something that if it's right for you, you should wait till years down the road. But the fact is, higher tax rates are worth looking at to see how, when, and where might it make sense even today to do this Roth conversion. So let's get into this break-even analysis, because this is where you can hopefully help figure out which option is right for you. So we showed you that at 20 years, inside and outside money are nearly identical, assuming 7% growth and 22% tax rate. But there are four key variables to this whole equation. 1, time horizon. The longer your runway, the more outside money wins. Why? Because that larger Roth balance, 100K versus 78K, has more time to compound. The gap grows. At 30 years, outside money leads by a significant margin, and at 35, think estate planning, it's staggering. Variable 2, your tax rate. The higher tax bracket, the more punishing it is to pay from inside. At 22%, you lose 22K. At 37%, you lose 37K. Each dollar that never makes it into the Roth doesn't get a chance to compound. Variable 3, the opportunity cost of the outside money. Now this one cuts the other way. If your outside money is sitting in a high-yield savings account earning 3 or 4%, the opportunity cost is low. But if that 22K is fully invested in equities earning, say, 7 or 8%, the opportunity cost is high, and the two options converge faster. All right, variable 4, future tax rates. If you believe tax rates are going up, and there are reasonable arguments that they will, given the current fiscal trajectory, then every dollar inside the Roth becomes more valuable. and that tilts the math more towards outside money, thereby locking in today's rate on a larger base. So what's the practical takeaway here? If you have a 15-year plus time horizon, meaningful liquid assets outside of retirement accounts, and you think you can do it, then by all means, use that outside money. If you have less than 10 years and your liquid assets are relatively low, it might be worth using inside money to pay that taxes from within that Roth conversion. Using these numbers hopefully gives you some basis to start making these decisions, and I would highly encourage you to consult a qualified financial planner, not unlike Norberg Wealth Management, if this is something that you'd like help figuring out on yourself. Now, I want to spend another moment here on the estate planning angle that we haven't talked about too much, because this is where one option does become the dominant choice and there's almost no debate. If you're doing Roth conversions with the intent of leaving money to your children or grandkids, your effective time horizon isn't yours, it's theirs. Under the Secure Act, most non-spouse beneficiaries have 10 years to withdraw inherited retirement accounts. But Roth IRAs, they can sit and grow tax-free for up to 10 years, and every withdrawal is tax-free. So think about this. Over a 35-year time horizon, the difference between 78 and 100K growing at 7% for 35 years is roughly the difference between 832,000 and 1,068,000. That's a $236,000 difference, all tax-free to your heirs from this one decision. So when you're doing legacy planning, outside money is almost always the right call. And the question isn't whether to do it, it's more, do you have the liquid assets and the ability to do it? All right, so let's bring this down to earth. Here's a practical framework for you as you're getting ready to make this decision for yourself. First, do you have liquid, non-retirement assets available to pay that tax bill? If the answer is no, well, the decision is probably made for you right there, right? Pay from inside and move on. A slightly suboptimal Roth conversion is still a Roth conversion. Second, what's your time horizon? If you're 68 and converting purely for income flexibility in the next 10 years, inside and outside money are probably going to be close enough that the opportunity cost of your cash matters more. If you're 60 and have 20 plus years of compounding ahead, or you're thinking about your heirs, outside money has a clear structural advantage. Third, what is that outside money currently doing? Cash in a money market at 3, maybe 4%? Low opportunity cost. Pay from outside. Fully invested in a diversified equity portfolio, earning 7 to 8% or more? Higher opportunity cost. Run the numbers before assuming which option wins. Fourth, never, under any circumstances, withhold from the IRA itself if you are under 59 and a half. That 10% early withdrawal penalty on the withheld amount turns what might be a marginal decision into a clear mistake. And fifth, this decision should always be modeled in the context of your full plan. Conversion amount, bracket management, Social Security timing, RMDs, avoiding IRMA surprises. This is a very complex decision, which if you've never done before, is very much worth having a partner. And again, this is where I would encourage you to work with a qualified, certified financial planner. So here's what we covered today. Roth accounts are not tax-free. They're tax prepaid. That reframe matters because it surfaces a question most people never ask. Where does that prepayment come from? When you pay from outside money, you're not just funding a Roth conversion, you're effectively moving outside taxable assets into a tax-free structure that would otherwise be inaccessible. At high tax rates, that makes Roth better than tax-free, if you will. The break-even between inside and outside money sits around 20 years at a 22% rate and 7% growth. Beyond that, especially for estate planning, outside money wins decisively. This is one of those decisions that looks small on paper but compounds into a very real large number over time. And the fact that most people make it on autopilot, letting the IRS withhold because it's easy, means that there's a real opportunity here for people who take the time to think it through. So, if you found this useful and you're wondering, okay, what do my numbers mean for me? I put a link in the description that you can click to get a free personalized retirement plan video. You just go ahead, take a minute, maybe two, put in your numbers, and I will send a video directly to your inbox addressing your concerns about your holistic retirement plan, be it Roth conversions or, again, Social Security claiming or RMDs or what have you. Again, all you have to do is click the link in the description and I'll send it right over to you. In the meantime, thanks for watching. and I'll see you out there.